All right, it looks like we have everyone. We have a great group this afternoon, and I am excited to welcome and introduce our friends from Texas A&M. We have Miss Karlie Abbott, Samantha Weed, and Alyssa Lamme, who are going to be presenting on the best use of data. So I'm going to turn it over to them to get started. Thank y'all so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Like she said, my name is Samantha Weed. I am the reading specialist here at A&M. Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Yes, howdy. I am Alyssa Lamme, and I am one of our learning specialists here at A&M.
And then my name's Karlie Abbott, Scholastic Supervisor here at A&M, working with the men's and women's track and field and cross country teams.
So what we wanted to talk to you a little bit about today is the best use of data. And the purpose of this is we really want to bring an awareness of just all the data that's involved in supporting student athletes, and then learn of ways that we can use all that data so that later we can use it to advocate for the importance of academics and student support services. So kind of here's the problem that we have. Student athletes and other stakeholders involved in student athlete support don't always have that buy-in for student athletes education and to be successful at that at this university level, right? And we're currently also, as we all know, working in this really unsure, changing world of athletics. And what we want to spend time, like I said earlier, what is to talk about this problem and how we can make sure that we advocate using data to get our name out, our academic names out there, get the support that we know that these student athletes need.
So when you're kind of looking at this as a whole, we created this, we call it our circle of support. So that's involving all those stakeholders that Sam mentioned. So kind of highlighting each group that we're going to be talking about and each stakeholder, we'll say, for the purpose of this presentation. So this is kind of outlining how things, it's almost like a trickle out effect rather than a trickle down. So we have our student athletes in the middle. They're the center of everything we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And at the end of the day, they are impacting so many departments around them that they may not even realize. So at the center of it all, of course, we have our student athletes. Then as you move out, we have it going out to our athletics academic services department. So whoever that may include within your institution. Here we have our Scholastic Supervisors, learning services team, tutors, mentors, all those kinds of things. Take it back out another level. So over top of that, we have our institution's athletic department. So that's encompassing everybody else. That's where we have our coaches, our sport administrators, our executive staff. Then we move out on the next level. We have our full university level. So for us, we'll be talking about Texas A&M specifics. So that's included with our campus partners that we have, our donors at the university level, and then out on the outer rings of everything, overarching all of this and impacting all these different levels is the NCAA and then higher education as a whole. So we'll kind of walk through each one of these rings and what it looks like, what data is relevant to them, and how we as athletics and academics are impacting all these different rings. So we'll kind of take a little walk through about each of these rings and all of our student athlete support that we provide.
So obviously, the first thing we should probably talk about is the student athlete. And we kind of give you a little key of where we're at in our little circle of support at the bottom. The student athlete obviously is the center, and we really wanted to just point out, and it was kind of an interesting thing in creating this graphic. We wanted to point out that student athletes go through a lot. The things that they bring into our labs, their tutoring, their class, when they take a test, all of these things are affecting them. And every single thing that we do, we need to be cognizant that this is what's going on in their lives, because it's also going to affect the data that we provide. Whether that's qualitative or quantitative data, we need to make sure that what we're talking about, it encompasses all of the things that they do that are busy in their lives.
So starting in that, so we have our student athletes, of course, at the center. So next we're moving out to this academic services within our athletics department. So here at A&M, in my title, we call it Scholastic Supervisors. You may be a little bit more familiar with some other terminology, academic coordinators, athletics advisors. So just for the purpose of this presentation, we'll be referring to those positions as Scholastic Supervisors. So just a couple of examples of different data that we're keeping here in this role. So obviously our grade reports, I feel like that is our bread and butter. That is our day in and day out. We're keeping track of those grades internally for ourselves, and then our weekly reports, maybe even daily, that you're giving to your coaching staff, progress reports throughout the semester, and then those end of semester reports encompassing everything leading up to that end of the semester report. We also got class and learning center attendance. So here we got class checkers. We get that data immediately. If they're not in class, we get an immediate notification that they're not attending class. Same with learning center. We have a policy here, if they're 10 minutes late, you're a no-show. So we get those as it's happening in real time, which then we're passing off to our coaching staff. Some other data that we're seeing, of course, GPA, individuals GPA, team GPA, department GPA, and then we keep a historical data about that as well. So we can see trends over the years about how each team and our department as a whole is doing. APR here at A&M, Scholastic Supervisors, we do the APR data as well. So we're keeping track of our single year, multi-year, and again, with that historical data with that APR as well. Progress towards degree, those NCAA eligibility benchmarks, we all know about that they got to meet. GPAs, percentages, all those kinds of things, those good old certification charts that we all know and love. And then last, I just kind of jotted down the academic awards and honors. So we have institutional awards. We just had our, whatever you may call it, we call it legacy awards, our little student athlete banquet. So we have different qualifications for that, which academics plays a part in. We want to make sure that we're nominating the right students. Same with conference level, same with the NCAA level. We, in my role, we get emails a lot from our SIDs asking for, hey, can you send me a list of students that meet this criteria? We want to nominate somebody for this award. So we need to make sure that we have that data on hand so we can appropriately nominate the right student athletes for the right awards that they may be qualified for. So why this is important at this level. So reporting this quantitative data to all these different stakeholders on the outside. All these people are impacted by student athlete success. So I really feel like here in academics, we are that starting point of this data branching out so that these other stakeholders will then possibly be affected by their academic performance. So these are just some examples. I'm sure at your own institutions, you're keeping track of data in some kind of way in this fashion. So just to kind of highlight a few things that we have here. Here at the top, we have our semester GPA data by sport by each year. So that's just a quick little snapshot of historical GPA. Over on the left-hand side, we have a full end of semester report for each sport. So we're also keeping track of that. Again, that's sport specific. We keep that historical data as well. So we're keeping track of all those things in one place, easy to get to. So again, when we get contacted, hey, we need to know this and that about this person, this team, whatever the case may be, we have that on hand. We are ready to provide that information. And then lastly, we just have those APR scores. And then in recruiting efforts as well, we're using that data to help recruit our student athletes. So here's just some hypothetical examples of something you might see in a recruiting presentation, an academic recap. Here's specifically how the team's doing. Coaches like to see that, recruits like to see that, their parents like to see that, all that kind of stuff. So our data is a lot more than just stuff that we're keeping on hand in our office, but we're sharing that with those around us, those other stakeholders as well.
So the next area in academic services is going to be the learning services. So this includes learning specialists, educational specialists, tutors, mentors, whatever your institution has that's meeting with those students day to day, working on skill building, course building. There's a lot of quantitative and qualitative data that can be tracked within those roles. So some examples include the number of appointments that are scheduled, number of total students that are supported with those services, student attendance. So like Karlie had talked about the no-show reports. That's how we on our end can help Scholastic Supervisors track that attendance. Session reports is a little bit more of the qualitative data. of what students are working on, what skills they're building, how has their behavior been, that Scholastic Supervisors can then use to communicate with coaches, or just how we can best work together to support the student and help them facilitate that growth. And then here at A&M, we do a lot of professional development for our part-time staff. We do workshops, appreciation weeks, and so we like to keep some qualitative and quantitative data on those efforts just to show that we're pouring into student athletes by also pouring into our part-time staff. And then any other programming that your specific institution could have. Keep track of it, keep some data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, whatever is appropriate, and keep that on hand. And so you see, we kind of build a Venn diagram here together, and that a lot of this data from Scholastic Supervisors and Learning Services come together and collaborate and support each other by documenting and reporting student behaviors and attendance. This leads to discussions about course progress, where students are at, and then create individualized academic plans for the students. So this is important because what Learning Services does is it tells the story of the day-to-day efforts to really paint a picture for how GPAs and academic honors are achieved. So there's a few ways that our Learning Services team tracks and displays this information. It is kind of a lot. This slide here is more of our own internal report. So like I said, here at A&M, we have tutor, mentor, and learning specialists that students meet with. And so we track that data individually. So you can see for tutoring, we track the total numbering of tutoring appointments, total number of student athletes supported, were we able to fill the tutor requests, what classes were the most popular. We even track historical data with cancellations and no-shows, and then we also break it down by sport of what sports were utilizing tutoring the most. And then it looks very similar on the mentor and the learning specialist side, and how many appointments were scheduled, how many student athletes supported, that historical data of appointments, no-shows, cancellations. And then here we also, or any Texas school, we have TSI requirements that students have to meet. So we also track how many students have met that TSI requirement and completion by going through our TSI program and meeting with our specialists. And then we provide a overall Learning Center services report that just accumulates all that data that we just looked at into one kind of simple sheet to break that down. And then our workshops is that professional development piece I was talking about for our part-time staff. And so it has a combination of that qualitative and quantitative data. So we use different topics to help develop our part-time staff just based on wants and needs for that population to best support students. And then we track the number of part-time staff that attend each one. We also have a requirement where each part-time staff member has to attend 2 workshops per semester. So we also have a separate data sheet with that as well. And then some other programming we have is we facilitate exam reviews, tutor huddles for our tutoring, and then we have a writing coaches program. And so without getting into the nitty-gritty, that just kind of gives a breakdown of what each of those programs helped facilitate throughout the semester. And then this semester recap is kind of the big picture items that we push out more externally. So it kind of gives a brief highlight of all that other data we just looked at. So once again, those total appointments, total number of student athletes assisted, other highlights for the program we've put together. And so any institution could really collect data and share what they feel is most relevant to their program. This is just some examples of what our learning services team does. And then the third piece in this Venn diagram for academic services is student athlete engagement, also might be known as student athlete development at other institutions. But this is the team that helps students prepare for life after sports and helps celebrate their accomplishments that they earn. So whatever institution you're at, some of the things that you could track are any community service initiative attendances, and you can try to calculate the economic impact that that had on the community. Track the number of students that are networking, who's signed up for a LinkedIn profile or any other kind of networking profile. Number of student meetings. Here at A&M, our team meets with students to help them with any career prep, resume building, or any questions that students may have. They can go to that team and have a one-on-one meeting with them. Number of events hosted. So whatever that looks like at your institution with your size, budget, and whatever you're able to facilitate, keep note of how many of those are, and also the attendance that you had from the students. And then just have some data of other programming that you have going on, and just have that ready to share externally. So how the learning services and the Scholastic Supervisor units collaborate with their SAE team is really encouraging student attendance and participation, letting them know that these opportunities are available to them, help inform teams and coaches, and also attend events as well, be like good models to students and supporting that team that, although might not have direct impact on grades, what they do still matters and help fully developing the student. So here's some ways that our student athlete engagement team displays their data. So as you can see, just kind of some big picture numbers of how many students are networking in the Podium X. And here at Texas A&M, we have a student athlete, Aggie athlete network that student athletes are able to join. So tracking how many of them are utilizing those resources, how many meetings were facilitated, events hosted, and community service hours. Here at A&M, selfless service is one of our core values, so that's something that we really like to highlight. And so you can see that breakdown over to the right of how many selfless service or community service events were attended, how many total hours did students put in, the total economic impact on the local community, and then just kind of a breakdown of some numbers for those individual events. And then we also track top student volunteers and top team volunteers for different awards. So just kind of bringing this back to a full circle moment, that all of this data that is tracked in all the units really is just coming together to support that student athlete growth and success. Here at Texas A&M, we have a motto of student athletes first, student athletes last. So all the programming we do, all the data that we track, it's all for the student athletes and how we can best support them and how we can have this data on hand to communicate externally to the rest of this web that we're going to be talking through. And this is just an example of one of the external I guess, snapshots of what students have achieved GPA wise, different honor rolls, and things of that nature.
And there was a question that says, who does your visualizations? Does someone in academics or engagement do them? We split, actually. Some of us, if it's the academic data, some of us in academics are going to be doing it, and then engagement, they do it. We use Canva, and they've created like a brand package that you can use in Canva, so that everything matches, which is kind of nice. Thank you. I appreciate that she said they're really good. So that's nice of you.
Thanks. I love them. So referring back to this little diagram that we have down here in the corner. So we talked a lot about academics just because that's our realm. That's what we do. But let's keep moving out. So institutional athletic department. So that's including our coaching staff. We do all this in a day-to-day. All of our academic services are working together. We have this data. What do we do with it now? So moving out, we got to make sure our coaches are aware of that. So how does this academic data truly impact our coaching staff? Why should they care about it? So let's start with APR. Coaches, they got to care about APR. They got to care about their team APR. That way they're not getting any kind of penalties for falling too low. So scholarship loss, postseason, and ineligibility. So making sure they're aware of their APR, their projected APR. That way we can make some changes if necessary. Of course, that progress towards degree, towards player eligibility. We got to make sure that everyone that we need to be eligible and on the field, court, track, whatever it may be, the pool, making sure that we have everyone out there who we need to be out there. Team GPA for that coach GPA bonus. That could be a whole rabbit hole in itself. But if it's in their contract, that matters to them. They need to know what's our GPA looking like. And then something else is just various data requests that we get from coaches on a whim. So, I might be in my office and I might get a quick text. Hey, I need a graduation timeline for everyone on the track team because, cuts might be coming. I need to know what my projected roster might look like. I need to know when people are graduating. I need to make sure I have that data, or at least somewhere I can quickly get that data to be able to send over to them to help them make these decisions. Again, student no-shows. As that happens in real time, we let our coaches know. Another example I get asked a lot, especially when we're doing recruits and we're talking about data, how many student athletes we have, specifically international student athletes. I just met with a student athlete earlier this week, and they were really concerned that they were coming into a university that didn't have that many international students represented. However, that's not the case. And I was able to give them these numbers, let them know what it looks like here. Class times and schedules. So knowing when student athletes, when they're available to help work a meet or when they're available for treatment, they want those times, they want those schedules. So then they're able to schedule their own things accordingly. So a lot of this data, the first people that we kind of are giving that to besides each other is that coaching staff.
So we're going to keep in that institutional athletic department bubble. And this is where we're going to get more into athletic directors. One interesting thing about athletic directors, and through putting this presentation together and all of the things that we've done, athletic directors don't necessarily gather data. They actually have other people bring them data. And so it was interesting talking to our executive athletic directors, just what that data is that they work with. They do two parts. They do internal support and then they do external support. So the internal support, you have academics, coaching, training, nutrition, compliance, holistic, or the external stuff, you have all of the marketing stuff, that kind of sportscape of fan experience and social engagement. So they're taking all of this data that we are responsible for providing in academics, but also everywhere else, and they're making these big decisions about it, which just further shows how important it is for us to even just reach out and, hey, this is just our pretty graphic we made. Have fun looking at it. It doesn't have to be just getting your name out there. And one of the things that I learned in doing actually this presentation is it's also okay to reach out and just a quick email to your athletic director of like, hey, this is what we're doing. And even if you're not at that level, you can still have the courage to speak to them. One thing that our athletic directors do here, though, which I found really kind of a cool thing, is at the end of each sports season, they do a student athlete real response survey that gives them feedback of all of the things, all of the data that they've been collecting and trying to put into place, gives them feedback of how they're doing. So I thought that was really interesting. And then going hand in hand with athletic directors, that's where, again, how important it is that we share what we're doing, especially in academics, because we're at that, I call it the front lines, but we're at that base level with student athletes all the time that athletic directors are going to be using donors to help give student athletes the things that they need. So I learned kind of the cycle of a donation thing throughout this. Basically, we have coaches and sports ops and AD, administrators, sports admins, they all work together to figure out what needs student athletes need for their sport. And then they go through and those ADs talk to donation foundations. For us, it's called the 12th Man Foundation. And they talk about how they could be supported. The donation foundation then reaches out to donors to receive funding. And then once that funding is received, donation foundations also reach out to student athletes and coaches to see what they would like to see. One good example is just this August, the SIN Academic and Wellness Center here on campus was opened. And it was through this whole thing, the donation foundation, the 12th Man Foundation, they really worked with student athletes to have specifically what it was that they needed and what it was that they wanted in a study space. And so now we have this beautiful building, all because of this data that we constantly are sharing with others.
Okay, so continuing in this little web that we got going on. So now we're at the university level. So Texas A&M as a whole, what are we doing with this data? What's some other data that our campus partners are looking at when it comes to our student athletes? So something else is program enrollment numbers. So bringing in this big population of student athletes, they're being integrated, you know, in all these different programs. So we're helping the campus program enrollment numbers increase by having such a big student athlete population here at our university, and as well as program diversity. So student athletes in itself, I mean, there's such a diverse group of students. So being able to bring that population into some of these programs has been really awesome. Our campus partners have really enjoyed having our student athletes being brought into these programs as well, whether that's freshmen coming in, transfers, grad transfers, whatever the case may be. And then also big role is streamlining that communication between us as Scholastic Supervisors and our campus staff. We're really trying to filter out coaches. We really want to be the liaisons between us and between campus. So we're not having, you know, a whole bunch of coaches reach out or assistant coaches. It just gets a little messy, confusing. Communication gets lost among the way. So we really preach here that we are the liaisons, and we try to keep it that way. Something else, of course, is the transfer evaluation process. So being really quick to communicate when we have transfers coming through. That tight turnaround time, it might seem a little excessive, but that's just how it is. So we just need to make sure that we're communicating with our campus partners. You know, here's why we're asking for such a quick turnaround on this, or, you know, this might seem like a stretch, but let's do the best that we can to make it work for these students coming in. And then also with priority registration timeline. So campus, they want to keep track of who has priority registration and why. And then our student athletes here at A&M fall into that priority registration window. So campus wants to keep track of who has that priority and why, like I said. So we're sending them numbers and making sure that they're aware of how many student athletes they can expect. And then also with registration, fresh on the mind, because we just did it about 2 weeks ago. With registration, also communicating to campus why our student athletes are trying to hurry and rush and get into their advising meetings. That's because their registration window is about a week earlier than everybody else. So they're really trying to expedite that timeline. So again, that communication, explaining why things are usually working so fast over here in athletics.
Then we get into higher ed. So we're still at that university level, but now we're reaching kind of in between university and higher ed. Believe it or not, we also impact that higher ed level. The different data that higher ed gives to the country and to different things is it depends on your state. It is at the state level. So for example, here in Texas, our Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, they're looking at completion of degrees, which is something that we track meticulously in athletics. And that information goes to that university level. It goes obviously to the NCAA level, but it goes to that university level and higher ed level so that they can make decisions on, again, how to support students. Another thing that's tracked is those marketable skills. we have those student athlete experience, student athlete development roles in athletics that are already, we're doing a lot of marketable skills. Higher ed departments are also looking at, okay, how these students graduated, how many of them actually have jobs now? That kind of data is something that we can also track because it's going to help us make informed decisions. Another thing that was interesting to me is student debt. They also track student debt. They're looking for like median undergraduate student loan debt. They're also looking at the different race, ethnicity, demographical data that comes with student loan debt, and also honestly with completion of degrees in marketable skills. Typically, an athletic department has the most demographically diverse group on campus, and so having all of that information really can help us make really, really great informed decisions as well. And then continuing moving outward, we also have NCAA. We obviously have initial eligibility and transfer eligibility that Karlie kind of already talked about, but we have those requirements that we need to provide to the NCAA. There's also academic team rewards, which includes like the number of sponsored sports and athletic scholarships given, provide support and to students via student assistant fund. They track progress rates, graduation rates, federal graduation rates. And then they also come together with all of this academic success data that we are providing them that is showing all of that. So it's just this outward effect. There's also, we wanted to show this really cool, if I could get to it, this really cool graph that we were able to find. And we can put this link I'll put this link in the chat for you if you wanted to dig around in it. But it has some really cool stuff of federal graduation rate trends, student athletes versus student body. And we have like men versus women and just some of the interesting trends that come through there. So if you're a data nerd like I am, you can kind of dig around in there. And let me put that in the chat for you really fast before I forget. But it's some really cool stuff that we are actually contributing to in academics. Oh, I clicked on it again. Oh my gosh. What is happening? Okay, now everything's in the way. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so all in all, the solution that we need to have in academics is we need to advocate for this upward mobility. We have that circle of support, and we need to keep advocating, especially for ourselves in academics, for that student athlete support. We are ones that are interacting some of the most with student athletes. And it is up to us to provide a lot of that data that a lot of people maybe don't really care about or don't even see because it's going to affect so many things. So here's some key takeaways that we wanted to provide, and we're going to kind of go into some collaboration discussion in a little bit, but just some key takeaways that we felt are helpful for the best use of your data is to keep data beyond GPA and APR. Like you saw in some of the things that we collect, we look at stories that mentors provide about student athletes. We look at student athletes talking about their tutors. We look at just like little things like just attendance. How many appointments did we have? Those really aren't too hard to track and follow through with. Also track data that you can control. As much as I know that the rest of everybody wants us to track GPA, APR, we can't always control all the things that are impacting a student athlete, right? And sometimes if we focus so hard on tracking those things, we lose sight of the things that we can control, and then it just kind of spirals. And I came to A&M in about 2021, I think. And prior to that, there was some data that was tracked and checked on, but when I started here, there was a really big push for tracking data, and as a result, I really think that the correlation between the amount of appointments that we've noticed that we need to increase, the amount of little student part-time support that we need to increase, and incorporating writing coaches, incorporating all of these different smaller data points has really come out to help us break a lot of records in GPA in the long run. Because we can control those things, we can provide those opportunities, and as a result, it's going to kind of snowball effect. The other thing is to reflect on the data that you have and what are you doing with it? Is there a better way that you can present things to make it easier to see? Is there utilize the people on your staff? Maybe there's somebody who's really, really great with graphics. We have a whole oh my gosh, I'm blanking on what they're called, but we have a whole crew, a whole like mini group of people that are all part of this committee to create graphics and social media posts and spreading about all the things that we're doing. So what are you doing with that data? Is it just sitting in your computer? Because not all the time, that doesn't really do much. The other thing is show your data's relevance. Talk to people about, don't just say, here's my numbers, here's the things that we do. Really walk with them through what support that you are providing and why it's so relevant. Share the data with others outside of your unit. We've talked a lot about that today, and then have data updated and ready to distribute timely, because you never know, Karlie brought this up too, you never know when you're going to have somebody come up to you and say, hey, why are you important? You could be able to just distribute that immediately and say, well, here's all the stuff that we're doing here. So with that said, I'm going to try something. I've never done a Zoom whiteboard. I mean, we practiced it, but we're going to do a Zoom whiteboard, which is kind of a fun thing. And we're all going to, I want you guys to go in and type just some of your questions and different things that you might have about all of this information. We have on here, we shared a lot about how we here at A&M use data, but we really would love to learn from everybody else on ways that you use data from your different universities. What are some of the challenges you have with data? And maybe we can collaborate and talk about those things. And then how do you wish you could collaborate with data? And I'm not just talking about outside of your university, but also inside of your university. What are ways that you could collaborate and talk to others about those things? So Karlie, do you want to explain? Because I see a different vision than you guys do.
Yes. No,
Do you want
quick little crash course in the Zoom whiteboard. You guys should be seeing like a tiny little green pencil in a circle somewhere. Go ahead and click on that. And then it should say annotate, and then click on the T. That'll bring up a text box for you. Just click and start typing. To make it visible to the group, you'll have to click out of that box, and then it'll show up for the group. Following the presentation, whatever gets typed in here actually gets sent to somebody in some kind of link in a document format. So we can also make sure that that gets sent out as well. So we can create a document out of this too. So go ahead and click the little pencil, the T, and then go ahead and type in your text box, and we're going to cross our fingers that it works.
Oh, yay, it worked. And if you don't feel comfortable in typing in this too, you can also type in the chat box, and we'd love to chat with you about different things. But I think Dorothy brings up a great point. Consistently defined historical data. When going through this kind of stuff, a lot of people all at once. We also started noticing that up until a certain point, when we started collecting data the way that we are collecting it, it doesn't always match. And so, because we're thinking about, do we use some of the stuff that we've used in the past? And but it's a thing, you know. What else is on here? To share what progress is being made as a way that that you can use data. We track the number of students who complete our academic intake questionnaire. That's an interesting data point that I haven't thought about. Oh, to justify support funding. Yeah, that's a good way to use data too. What challenges do you have with data? We talked about consistently defined historic data. Yep, that's a thing. Not always having ready access is something that is a big thing. We use Teams, but sometimes you don't know how other people are organizing it, right? I'm gonna make some of these. Oh, I guess I can't make the text smaller. Not always having ready, sometimes the quantitative data doesn't tell the whole story that qualitative does. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's you want to provide people with all of those great stories, but sometimes it doesn't, you don't have the ability to. I know I find that a lot. I feel like a lot of us in learning services come and see that it's how do you quantify qualitative data? Understanding and accounting for trends, that's a challenge too. How to measure progress, that's not just GPA, especially in learning services. Yeah, going back to that qualitative, how do you quantify qualitative? How do you quantify learning? It's a hard one.
Then in the chat, I see someone mentioned using EAB to track appointments and use the data to inform hiring of peer tutors and formation of study groups and to justify for funding as well. So yeah, even using data to support why you need a bigger staff, why you need to hire on more people, whether they be full-time or part-time. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Also mentioned sometimes there's a struggle having reliable data. For example, the default is that a student showed for an appointment, or the tutor learning specialist has to remember to go in and mark no-shows. So yes, that is a challenging to make sure you're giving accurate data, and sometimes there are those gray areas that could sometimes skew the data a little bit.
Yeah, we've kind of had to really enforce the no-show marking here. It took a couple years, I would say. Alyssa, you probably could confirm that. It took some time. And still it's not perfect. I see another person says that they use data to track the number of students receiving learning support who also receive disability resource center services. That's really interesting. Is I don't see anybody talking about how they wish they could collaborate. Any brave souls want to talk about how they wish they could collaborate more with data, or some ways they they think about that they would like to collaborate, but they don't know how to make it happen?
We have an answer in the chat that says better collaboration with coaches.
Yeah, I feel like that's a challenge. I don't know. Karlie, do you have any ideas with that one?
Yeah, I mean, coaches are so unique in their own ways. But I mean, collaboration with coaches, no, I mean, it is so important, but at the end of the day, kind of what we say is give them the information, tell them what you need to tell them, what they choose to do with it. You can't affect that, but just making sure that you are giving them the data, giving them accurate data. But like I said, at the end of the day, what they choose to do with it, at least you can say that we told them.
Mm. Some on the whiteboard, collaborating academic data with student athlete development data all in one place. I think that's a challenge just as a unit to figure out how you're going to organize all of your data and keep it in one place so you can compare and talk about things is a hard one. Oh, where did the compliance one go? There it is. And I feel kind of bad because we didn't put compliance on here. We didn't. But yes, it says part 2 of the question, not in academics, but compliance. And I wish I could have some data to show some coaches and others how many things I have to review as a department and a one-stop shop. Yeah. Compliance, I'm not gonna lie, compliance terrifies me sometimes with the amount of data that goes in and out of your offices. Because that's what you do all day. But yeah, having some sort of way to show coaches and others what your output is and how much you work. I think that's a great thing to think about how you could do that. If anybody has any ideas of how to do that, I would love to do that. You're fine if you haven't used whiteboard before. Put it in the chat. You're great.
And with all of this too, I mean, definitely just acknowledging that here at Texas A&M, I mean, we quite literally have an army of a department here with academics, and it's not like that at every school. So a lot of you guys, I mean, you're wearing all these different hats. So can you nitpick all this data? Can you keep track of every little thing, you know, that we talked about? Alyssa went through all these examples of our learning center data, our mentor data. Not every university has the ability to really break down and really bring that detail to everyone's attention. So just kind of acknowledging that here at Texas A&M, since we do have so many people on staff, we are able to do that maybe a little bit more seamlessly than others. But definitely, if you're at a smaller institution, maybe just having that starting point with no shows, starting point with you know, the hiring of tutors or whatever it may be. So maybe just adding a little bit here and there that can add up, and even that tiny bit that can make a difference. But like I said, here we do have the resources, we have the staff, we're able to collect a little bit more detailed data. But I think whatever you are able to do within your own institution and within your own role as well, these different hats that you may be wearing, I think every little bit that you're able to track would matter and counts.
And Karlie has a really great point with that, and she has a good experience because she's come from a university that's not as big as here, and kind of seeing that double viewpoint can be helpful. I come from a higher or a secondary education background, and so my whole background looks completely different which is kind of interesting to look at the different importances that data has on everybody and what our priorities are. Another one that I see is data with enrollment times and individual academic success. Do you mean like a correlation between those or just two separate ones? Because that would be interesting on both things, on all layers. But yeah, that data enrollment times, there really is that layer of, I don't know why we didn't put compliance, but there really is that layer of compliance that we also have to work together with too, to get those enrollment times, to get those eligibility things and all of that in place too.
I wish there was a one size fits all perfect, you know, how to collect the data, how to collaborate, how to get coach buy-in, how to get AD buy-in. You know, I wish there was a really good answer about that. But I mean, at least I feel like in this group, but I mean, as a whole and what we do in our departments just across the board, I mean, we have each other. So I would definitely say bouncing off of each other and bouncing ideas off of everybody, I think would be really important in all this, and however we can all collaborate and come together on this. Here at Texas A&M, we are more than happy to help assist anybody. And we are also always looking for ideas and how to perfect our own processes. So we really appreciate you guys, you know, listening in and giving feedback and bouncing ideas off. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate the large group that's joined, and if anything, send us a chat, email us. We'd love to collaborate and talk with you about all the wonderful ways that you use data.
That was awesome, ladies. Thank y'all so much for the wonderful presentation. And I'm excited that we had such a great group, a lot of feedback and interaction here at the end. And if y'all would please, when you leave out, give them a shout on the survey that pops up as soon as you leave the presentation. And our next our last two presentations of the day start in 10 minutes. So we hope to see y'all there. But thanks again, Samantha, Alyssa, and Karlie, for a wonderful presentation this afternoon.
Appreciate it, Sarah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.